Welcome to Shift, a college admissions ACT, SAT, and CLT podcast for a changing world. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have affordable ACT and CLT courses that include everything you need to ace the exam. A full textbook, tons of review questions that are backed by our memory-enhancing algorithm, videos on key topics, a built-in study planner, and full-length practice exams. You can get a free trial by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code podcast to get 10% off at checkout. Now, let's get started. Today, we've got Howard Freedman from Financial Aid Consulting with us. And Howard, I'd love if you could introduce yourself, your company, and your book.
Well, my name is Howard Freedman. I founded Financial Aid Consulting about 22 years ago. My website is www.financialaidconsulting.com. It contains a lot of articles, ways to communicate with me, and essentially the way I like to work with people, help them, and move on. My background is very varied. I have an MBA. I've written 3 books, many articles. I've been an industrial engineer, a financial manager, a person that was recruited to build various payroll departments. I work on basically a foundation on which I look for process improvements and how to make things simple, how to get through the red tape, and especially how to get families to really start the financial aid or college process in the most simple, positive, and objectives that they could possibly achieve. My goal is to help the next generation move forward in a way that's both rewarding and affordable. My book, Making College Happen, is available on Amazon.com.
Great. Yeah, so let's get started today. Really, today's topic, right, is how to determine if you can really afford college. And I think, there's a kind of layers to this, right? Because I think kind of the next layer is how to determine if you can really afford the college that you're looking at, right? But I think let's start with maybe the first layer, right? So when you're talking to your clients, right, how does this conversation come up, and kind of how do you want to start this podcast?
I think to answer the question, very few people can afford college. Very few people can afford buying a house. Very few people can afford buying a car without some help. You can define financial aid as a resource to help to achieve your goals of going to certain colleges. But it's very rare, unless a parent or family plans ahead, to afford college with the resources you have. So I think a very prudent thing to do, first of all, is to start this process as early as a student's freshman year in college. Now, I'm saying that because essentially you have 3 years to really build your resume, to build your value, to find out about what different colleges are looking for, to really start an open discussion that will prepare you to be valuable. Now, colleges use a terminology called enrollment management. What that means is they're looking for the best, the brightest, the students that are likely to continue to their 4-year degree and bring some value, recognition, maybe alumni funds into the college. But to do that, you really have to prepare without surprises. I think today with technology, information about what a college costs, how much is given out in aid, the acceptance rates, and a lot of other data will tell you up front, also the net price calculator, about what it's going to cost. So there should be no surprises. And I think when you look at this, can you afford it? It's not you, the student, it's a family. Unless you're an independent student, can the family afford it? And to do that, you have to have some open, ongoing dialogues with the family to see, one, how much can the family afford? How much can they give you? What is your likelihood of getting accepted? And how generous is the school to give you what they call gift aid, which is scholarships and grants? And most importantly, what is the net out-of-pocket cost to attend a college times 4? Because that's potentially what the debt will be to go to college. So again, and the other, in conjunction with that, you have to decide what is the overall purpose and goal of attending college. It should be somewhat career-driven because you want to go to college, get out, and get a good job. So your question about affordability, yeah, right now you can't afford it, most likely. But when you graduate, you're going to get that great job, the lucrative job, okay? And, make a lot of money and all that, pay off your loans. Yeah, it's really worth it. If you're going to go to a college that is quite expensive, prestigious maybe, to get a degree in education, it may be better off to go to a state school. So affordability is taken in conjunction with rationality. So how do you want to spend your money? How much money do you have, or your family has? How do they want to spend it? How well protected are they for their retirement years? Are there other children in the family? And how much debt, when you graduate, how much debt are you willing to take on? Because that could be a very big burden. Along with it, you might say, well, the numbers don't really look good. I'm an average student. I'm not going to, get a lot of scholarship money. Maybe I could do something else. So the great thing today is people have choices. Choices. So when you talk about college, it's not necessarily a 4-year institution. It could be a 2-year. It could be online. It could be part-time. It could be going to the military. It could be
right, ROTC. There's
any other way.
On our podcast a while back that was big into that. I mean, there's the 2-and-2 plan, right?
Yeah,
that's becoming pretty popular in California.
Yeah,
or at least that I've seen. Right, 2 years community college, and then 2 years, transfer to a state school or something like that.
Well, it's the same program essentially. Go to your 2-year college. As you think about it, it's cheap. It's cheap. So that's 2 more years. That's 2 more years you can save. And the important thing is that when you graduate, employers aren't going to look at your community college certificate or whatever. They're going to look at your degree from the college you graduate.
Well, and to be frank, right, as an employer myself, you basically stop looking at the school after the first job or 2 jobs on the resume, right? And you can get those jobs on the resume through internship programs while you're in school. So really, yes, I'm sure that there are some people that care a lot more about the school than I do, but for me, I think it's mostly about getting in the door at that first job and getting your career kicked off.
I think if I can add to that, I use an analogy which I was taught years ago. It's called the elevator speech. Okay, and the elevator speech, excuse me, is, let's kind of picture this. Let's say you're on an elevator and it's you looking for a job. and then there's an executive uh, in the elevator. It's both you too, and the executive says to the student, "Oh, what brings you here?" And he says, "I'm looking for a job. I went to XYZ college. I took a lot of uh, art courses. I took a lot of courses in literature. I did this. I was on the cheerleading team. I did this, that. And the executive says, hmm. And then the student says, well, would you like my resume? And he takes it. The executive gets off first. He takes the resume and he throws it in the wastebasket. And the thing that was missed is it should have been what kind of value is my education going to bring to my prospective employer? It's not about me. It's about you. What are you willing to buy? What value do I bring to to be hired in an organization? They don't really care about the courses. They care about your ability, your contribution, your value added, and what you're going to bring to the success of the organization. That's what it's about. So it's not just about the student. It's qualifying the student to say, hey, this is what I want to do. But you have to convince somebody else that you're worthy of working for them and get, a lot of money because of the value you bring.
Well, and also, I mean, yeah, I agree with all that. Well, so yeah, I think just in general, the big thing for me is that I think for a long time, and I think this is shifting back the other way, but when I was growing up, right, and I'm now 36, so I went to college 2007. Going to college was basically like the point. Like it wasn't like you didn't really look beyond that. It was just like you got to go to college. Why? Well, because you got to go to college. What happens after college? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Like that was like what me and most of my peers. That was our thought process. And then nowadays, what I think it should be, right, is it's a transaction. It's a step on the way to something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is this something else that you want to be a doctor? Is this something else that you want to be a biologist or geologist or go into Wall Street or whatever it is, right? Like, but it's a step on the way to the path, and then when it's a tool and not a goal, you can have a more thoughtful conversation with yourself about like the pros and cons of everything. I mean, what do you think? Like, do you agree with that statement? And
I think everything in life, I'll respond by saying there's an education and there's learning.
Mhm.
An education is a formalized program of programs to give you the basic skills and knowledge. And learning is something that we do every day until we die. It can be a stepping stone, but I think you need to be careful because um, I think where things have changed is students have more opportunities that they need to discuss with their parents. And I'll say that's also in my book. It's not a big problem if you don't go to college. It's not the end of the world. There's a lot of successful people that didn't go to college. It's it's okay to be a tradesperson. If you like to be a tradesperson, it makes you happy, and you don't want to sit in a classroom for the next 4 years. It's worth it. It really is worth it. Or you want to go part time or work or whatever. Those are also stepping stones to create overall value. And the analogy I gave you about the elevator speech, it's kind of the same. I think you have to learn to sell yourself to somebody else that you're diversified and you can adapt to their culture. and give them the value, because it's not going to be perhaps a lifetime job. Going to college, it used to be when my parents worked, they staying on a job a long time was considered a really good thing. Now there's a lot of mobility, so whatever choice you make, it's not a lifelong choice to stay in it forever. You want to change, you want to get different experiences. Maybe the job or things you're looking for isn't exactly what you thought it would be. Maybe you want to go back to school. So certainly you never can learn too much. It's just a matter of what you learn, and what you do will have some value after graduation.
Yeah, and I think that's all important as you're considering, whether you can afford college and kind of what college is going to get you, right? Like what your outcome is going to be from that. And I just think in general that, really, like, I agree with you that like the trades should totally be a part of the conversation. I think that there's a big pushback in that direction. Because yeah, at the end of the day, like, since I went to college, the costs have gone up, I don't know, like 10 to 15% a year every year,
Mm-hmm.
like compounding, right? Like it's just gotten outrageous. I have friends who, they just had a kid and their financial advisor said, if you want to make sure you're covered, your target for their college fund should be 700 grand, because if you take that and you apply it 20 years out, that's what it's going to be. And it just feels like there's no way that at some point, like, there will be a breaking point, right, where the cost gets too high. Yeah, but oh yeah, go ahead. I want you to respond to that, and I'd love to get back to like the main topic. Yeah.
Saving for college is great. It could work for and against you. And I encourage people, every client, to talk to a financial planner uh, as well, to really understand, is it such a big deal to pay for college? I have a client, they were really worried. They had $700,000 in a 529. So what are you worried for? Because it's either you use it for college or you get a Roth IRA. But you don't really have to worry. But how many people have $700,000 to put in the plan?
Yeah,
they don't need help. They don't need help. So I think you should plan. I think have something, but it probably will never be enough to pay for college. But it helps, but it won't cover everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So then I'd love to kind of make sure that we stick back to the main topic, right? Talking about how to determine if you can really afford college. With the notes that you sent me, like, where do we leave off? Do we leave off at, do we cover, college reps, college visits at this point?
Well, I think college visits are important, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you why. And again, something I discussed in my book. I find a lot of clients, when they visit, I'll ask them, well, tell me, have you visited any college? And they say, well, I went with my parents and we went to XYZ college, and what'd you think of it? Well, the kids were very nice. The buildings were nice. Everything was friendly. Everybody was friendly. And I think it's really a school I might like. But did you find out about your major? Did you find out about your qualifications? Did you find out how much aid you might get? Did you look around the community? Did you talk to students? Do you make plans to stay overnight? Do you have a way of evaluating each school against each other? What's important to you? Is it the major, because this particular college offers this major that's not offered by others? So I think through diligence, by doing your work ahead of time, I think it's important to write down your questions and gather your answers consistently between all the colleges you visit. There's also virtual tours of colleges. I think they're great, but the main thing on a campus visit, and I encourage, is your gut. Your gut
Yeah.
will
Well,
tell you if
do you
it's
feel
right.
like yeah, do you feel like that helps with like the whole affordability thing because you are getting a real, you can really envision what you're going to be paying for?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it helps because again, it's a matter of balance. How much you're willing to pay for, and what are you going to get out of it. So I think um, I have made some good investments, and I've made some bad ones. I'm really proud of my good investments. I'm kind of kicking myself for the bad ones, and I think the important thing before any decision, anything about costs or anything, is facing the reality of what it is. And that involves some communication with the children. I have been with clients where the parent says, okay, child, I want you to go to state school because they're cheaper. I want you to go to state school because they're cheaper. Well, that's not necessarily true. If you look at a private school, that's going to give you more money. So there's a lot of diligence here. I think there's a lot of diligence in terms of saying, where's the value? Where can I get the biggest bang for the buck? And that takes analysis. I've done spreadsheets, I've done reviews, I've talked about appeals, because you don't always have to accept your financial aid award. And I think you have to really show a passion. You really have to illustrate to the schools, and I learned this, that it's really important to periodically contact the schools and let them know you're interested. They want to know that. Because by doing that, they know that this student's really interested, and maybe we can move their application and everything to the top of the pile because they're more interested than a student that's going to put down 20 schools and is only interested in two.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So then, yeah, I also wanted to, ask you kind of, are there some websites or just like different places? Like, I really want to make sure we give some useful, actionable tips for people that are trying to, both figure out if they can afford college and then also, you know, have all the information that they need to make that decision, right? And I think a big part of that is like scholarship search engines and just other things like that. So I'm curious if you like what are the websites that you think are reputable that you'd recommend to people to use to kind of get a sense for what their options are.
Well, one good website is FastWeb is a good one. The College Board is a good one. Scholarship Prowler, I think that's another one. But what you're going to find a lot of these websites, and I listed a bunch in my book, um, will take you through a process um, to consider a lot of different scholarships um, that may be very competitive. The other places to look are the state websites. So if you do a search on state, college financial aid, they'll list it by state and tell you which states, um, what they'll give up, what type of scholarships. And where I live, uh, they have a scholarship for going to state schools. Uh, they have scholarships. I encourage people, and this is a little bit different, to do a search on companies and find out what kind of scholarships they may give out. So again, I think I was looking, well, going through the back door because there's a lot of websites, you can do a Google search, a lot of websites. But I think with all those websites, and I would encourage every student before they even do that to create their own resume. Not a resume for a job, but I think before you look for it, you should put down or create a resume talking about your education, talking about your skills, talking about great accomplishments, leadership, um, extracurricular activities, community service, um, academic accolades, um, really special skills. Because by doing that, again, we go back to what we're talking about selling yourself and your skills. So if you're applying for a scholarship and they're looking for somebody that's has great leadership skills, and you say, "Well, I led the food drive and I led, coalition for this and that and everything." That's what you do before you look for scholarships, because you do that, and also if you've done a resume before, um, it gets you pumped up. It really gets you pumped up to say, "Gee, I didn't realize I did this much. I didn't realize I've accomplished this much." Um, maybe if you're an athlete, you want to talk to uh, your coach. If you're in any clubs, um, you can do that. I put a list when I did the book. I sat down. I spent an hour, and I put together 50 sources of where people could get scholarships. 50. Not the website, but just different things. Like, were you is your parent a firefighter in public service? What about your religion? What about your culture? Are you an orphan? Are you have special skills? Singing, writing, uh, what country are you from? What's your religious affiliation? Um, all that stuff, because, you know, you can really think and think and think and think. And I came up with 50. I said, I was just in the mood. I said, yeah, 50. Oh, call your church or synagogue. Go to the police department. Go to the local store. Talk to them about it. Local store, local supermarket. Go to your guidance teacher. Don't forget the college, because the college has lots of scholarships they may not tell you about, but find out how you can get them. They're there. Be creative. I believe, and I've done before, I've written letters to CEOs and CFOs introducing myself and maybe wanting to have an informational interview with them. And then through that interview, there may be some scholarship opportunities, or maybe they need somebody for a summer job, or they may want to be uh, maybe maybe they've been victims of, God forbid, the fires in California or things in Hawaii, that they've lost everything. And it goes on and on and on and on and on, that you have to be creative. You can't just go to a website and say, okay, let me pick up some scholarships. You may, or pay somebody to do it. I think creativity, but before you do that, take an inventory yourself and see what you have and what you have to offer. Work on during that time, there's nothing to say you couldn't work on your college essay, because if you do that early, you might discover a lot of good things about yourself, and that can be used towards your scholarship search.
Well, and also it's, one of the key differences between college admissions when I was doing it and today is what colleges want to see is that you're really passionate about something, and that you're, pursuing that passion, or that, your essay talks about it, or what have you. And hopefully that passion could lead to a career, but it could just literally be something like, I'm really passionate about, helping, my local community church or things like that. But the point is that, I agree. Basically, I agree with you. And I think that what can happen is when you start to figure that out, like, what is your story going to be in your college application process? You can then start to think about, what are the fundraising opportunities for that story as well, right? Like, what are the organizations that provide financial aid that align with that story? Maybe there's, say, an organization for aspiring biologists. I don't know. Right? Like, I think you can uh, you can have it all tie together, but you've got to start early and prepare and be thoughtful about it.
I like to just add one other, and every year I buy the almanac. I buy the almanac, and one of the things that I was thinking about is they have a list of all these professional organizations, hundreds of them, hundreds of them. If you look through there and found them, and I think it's easy to find the address, and you wrote a letter, maybe you can write one letter and just adapt it for organizations, like professional organizations. I'll say CPAs come to mind, electricians, scientists. All those organizations want to give scholarships to aspiring people. And there's a treasure trove of all those organizations that you can really use to market yourself. Why not go to the source? Don't fool around with these other things. Go to the source, and people are actually doing. Look at the alumni. Get an alumni list. I mean, maybe somebody in the community is alumni. There are always good resources to get to what you need to get to.
I agree. Are there so I feel like we've covered everything that we had on my list, but are there any things that we didn't cover today that you want to make sure we got to?
Well, I think the most important thing for anything, I can't give you the source of the quote, but essentially it says, if you don't have a destination, you'll never get there. So, so you have to kind of look at it and say, you can't, this is a very serious uh, opportunity that costs a lot of money that, needs to be used wisely. I like to quickly share, because in my book, I do have case studies, but this is one case study I think makes a lot of good points. I had a client who had a son that wanted to go to school of music, like a high college, like Berkeley, for example, is a good college. And then he wanted to be a musician. The father had just gone through a divorce, but he felt an obligation to his son to pay for his expensive college. So he went to his retirement account, liquidated that, and he used that to pay for college. Okay. He never really checked to see how well he was doing or anything until at the end of the year, he gets a letter that the student has been expelled from the college because he liked to party more than study. So what happened is the 1 year of retirement savings went down the drain. The student had no place to go, and the parent just listened to what the student wanted without really having this detailed discussion and about not talking about accountability, because there has to be accountability when a student goes to college. There should be accountability to let their parents know how they're doing. And you don't just say, I like this. And this father gave away his future. Gave away his future because he did not take the time to plan. He didn't take the time to do his diligence. He didn't go on a campus visit. He didn't, find out how his son was doing, or left everything to the FAFSA for him, because that's not everything. This is a very, very big decision-making process that not only involves the student, their parents, but other people too. As I said, accountants, financial guys, or people in the process of a divorce, maybe a family law attorney. All that stuff. Knowledge of power, as somebody said, and that's what's so important. The knowledge about college, I didn't mean that to rhyme, but the knowledge of college ahead of time is what's going to determine whether you succeed or not. And then if you go through it, you persevere, you work hard, you're really focused, you'll come out a winner. And the word yes and no really comes into play here. You expect success and you earned it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, I love that. I think it's a great thing to end on. This has been Shift, a college admissions podcast for a changing world, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Howard Freedman from Financial Aid Consulting. And you can get a free trial of Achievable's ACT and CLT courses at achievable.me.